Mark Rogers TV talking up the Iron Bowl, arguably the biggest and most fierce rivalry in college football. We bring in Gary Harris. He's the sports director at WVUA in Tuscaloosa. How can you get any better than this than going right to the heart of Alabama football there in Tuscaloosa? How you doing, Gary?
Doing great, Mark. To give the viewers an idea of just how close I really am to it, I'm sitting in Bryant-Denny Stadium right now. We're part of the Digital Media Center here, which is WVUA 23, Crimson Tide Productions, which of course is the department's production facility, and also the Center for Public Television and Radio. So I come to work every day inside Bryant-Denny Stadium. So yeah, I'm right on top of it.
When I said the heart of Alabama football, I had no idea.
Yeah, it's really neat. Right, I mean, yeah, it's really neat. I mean, we're just right here, literally in the stadium. So it's a state-of-the-art facility. So it's pretty cool.
Before, Gary, we talk about the football that we may see on the field on the plains this Saturday. Yeah, we all admire college football rivalries. It's something that distinguishes college football from the other sports, I think. You see Washington State, USC, UCLA, Ohio State, Michigan from afar, but you're right in the middle of it with the Iron Bowl. Can you give us a taste of what makes this one unique?
I can, and I've covered it for many years, and I have respect for all the great rivalries. Listen, they're very, very important. You know, Michigan, Ohio State, UCLA, USC, Florida State. I mean, you go on and on, South Carolina, Clemson, and you can name them, all the great rivalries. I think what makes this one really unique is, first of all, the lack of professional sports in the state of Alabama. It's just not here. I mean, you've got, AA minor league baseball. You've had a few other smaller professional leagues that have tried to come through here, but you don't have a Major League Baseball team. You don't have an NFL team. You don't have an NBA team. You don't have an NHL team. So college athletics, primarily college football, is it. And it's an in-state rivalry. So people live and work together. Alabama fans are married to Auburn fans. And it truly is, Mark, something you live with in this state 365 days a year. I mean, on Saturday afternoon or Saturday evening around 6 p.m., you're going to have some people that are incredibly happy, and their outlook on life is going to be great. They're going to look forward to going to church the next morning. They're going to look forward to the work week. And you're going to have another group of people in this state that are miserable. And it'll affect, in some cases, how they treat other people, their attitude toward whether or not they even go to church on Sunday. Do they lay out of work on Monday for fear of having to be ridiculed by the other team's fans that they work with? And it's that big. And I'm not embellishing here. I mean, unfortunately, sometimes it even goes over the edge. And we already had an incident in Mobile just a couple of weeks ago where an Auburn and Alabama fan were arguing, and one shot the other, which is absolutely ridiculous and crazy. But, it's that important to the people of this state. As I said, almost to a fault. I think once you let a sporting event kind of affect your outlook on life and how you treat other people, it's gone too far. And not everybody does that, but you do have the extreme edge of the fan bases that do that. But yeah, it's very important to just about everybody that lives in the state. Even the people that aren't really football fans are affected by it because it affects so many people in the state. So even if they don't really care who wins, they're going to have to deal with, employees or coworkers or people in their social lives that are affected by it. So I think, for my money, it is the most intense rivalry in the country. I believe that.
Yeah, I would say so too. You could make an argument about best rivalry and however you want to term that, but when you talk about fierce in-state, wow, that's at the heart of college football there in Alabama. There's a documentary that I think was produced not long after the Cam Newton comeback win in 2010 that really gives an indication of how fierce and how loyal these fans are on both sides. I know I was taking a trip. I was somewhere in Tennessee, and I picked up a radio station. This was during summer vacation in mid-July. I picked up a radio station. They were arguing Auburn, Alabama in the middle of June or July. It certainly goes for 365 days a year. So we all, as these games captivate the nation, and especially when there are the championship aspirations of these teams within the conference, and then the college football playoff that captivates the nation. We can think of the kick six and the Cam Newton comeback I just alluded to. But for you personally, when you think Auburn, Alabama, what are your own personal memories of this rivalry?
Well, it goes back. I was born in South Florida. I moved around a lot as a kid, but my family settled in Northeast Alabama in 1973 when I was in the 4th grade. And my dad was not really a sports fan, but he was a Bear Bryant fan. So when we settled in Alabama, I just kind of even as a kid, and I was already a huge sports fan, I gravitated toward Alabama. So I became an Alabama fan. And even professionally, when I have not lived in this state, I've kept up with the rivalry. But my first year in TV, because I was fortunate to get started as a freshman in college, was 1982. And that was the Iron Bowl where Alabama lost and Auburn snapped the 9-game losing streak, bowl over the top, Coach Bryant's final game against Auburn. And I was, Mark, again, I was 18 years old, but I was working for a CBS affiliate in Anniston, Alabama, Channel 40, WHMA TV. And covering that game, I was already learning how to separate fandom from, because I was with a couple of veteran journalists, a sports director and a sports photographer. And, inside, I'm torn up, watching Auburn rush the field. So that's a memory that will always stay with me, because not only was that my first game, Alabama-Auburn game as a sportscaster, it was my first Alabama-Auburn game, period. I had never even been as a fan. So that stays with me because I saw right up close, after growing up, watching Alabama win every year, what it was like to be on the other side and how Auburn people reacted to beating Alabama. So I stayed in the TV business in the state of Alabama at that station, then another station until 1986. So I covered every Iron Bowl until then. Then I was out of the state for about 12 years. And then when I came back and started covering the Iron Bowls here in Tuscaloosa for this station and being so close to it, I mean, I can just rattle them all off for you. And, clearly, as you know, as a sportscaster, you learn to be objective about it. You learn how to watch games without cheering and so forth. But even if you're not a fan of the team, when you cover a team, you want to see them do well. You pull for them. So, my first Iron Bowl back here actually was, and we weren't on the air yet, but I was already back in Tuscaloosa preparing for this job, was the 97 Iron Bowl at Jordan-Hare when Ed Sissom fumbled the football. Alabama had the game won as a huge underdog against Terry Bowden's team. And so I was there in 99 when Alabama won for the first time at Jordan-Hare. I was here in 2000 at Bryant-Denny when Alabama was awful, Mike DeVos' final Iron Bowl, and Auburn won 9-0, and he was fired after the game. And saw all the Franchione games, the Shula games, and now, of course, what Saban's done. So I have a lot of memories from the rivalry. But the biggest thing that stands out is what I told you earlier, is just the total feeling of just joy on one side and then just the total agony on the other. And that's the way it is. I mean, this is not one of those games where, I've been to the Georgia-Florida game before down in Jacksonville, and that's a serious rivalry too. But both fan bases are living it up. And even after the game, you're disappointed when you lose, but they're still partying. The loser of this game, there's no partying. There's no tailgating after the game if you lose. I mean, it's walking out with your head held low, and the other fans, you're just hoping don't rag you too much. So, but I've seen a lot of Iron Bowls. I've seen a lot of great games, and you referenced, just like so many people do, since Saban's been here, he's 7-3 against Auburn. He lost his first year in 2007 when Alabama wasn't very good. And, in 2008, they won 36-0. They've won 42-14. They've won 49-0. They've won 30-12. But the two games that are most talked about are the two losses. The comeback when Alabama was up 24-0 and lost 28-27 here in 2010 at Bryant-Denny. And then, of course, the kick six in 2013, which is one of the most phenomenal college football games ever. So I think that sticks with Alabama people a little bit, that because of those two games and because of those two special seasons that Auburn had, I think around the country there's still a feeling that this is pretty much an even series since Saban's been here, because those two games carry so much weight. But for the most part, Alabama has dominated Auburn, and of course, not right now is working on trying to win 4 in a row in the series. But again, you have an Auburn team this year that's capable, if they win this game and beat Georgia, playing for being in the college football playoff. And as long as Auburn can do that every few years, they're relevant, and they have stood up to Saban. So this is a huge game on Saturday.
And if you love offensive football, that game 3 years ago, 55-44, where Auburn had the third quarter lead, and then Alabama with Amari Cooper making all sorts of big plays, coming back to win by 11 points, was a fun one to watch as well. Looking at Auburn, we knew that they were good the entire season. We knew that they were top 15 good, but they gave us a sneak at possibly being elite when they went on the Plains, beat Georgia, number 1 at the time, and really dominated that game defensively up front. Just your thoughts about this Auburn football team and what you see out of Jarrett Stidham, what really stands out to you on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, what you said, very good team. 9-2, but again, 2 losses, one at Clemson. My goodness. And they were atrocious offensively and still hung in the game because of their defense. And then they blew a 20-0 lead at LSU, and a game that they probably should have won. So, and outside of that, for the most part, other than a very lackluster effort against Mercer, where they just didn't play well coming off the Clemson game. They've blown people out. You know, they blew out Ole Miss, they blew out Mississippi State, they blew out Arkansas, they blew out Missouri. I mean, they have been a dominant football team outside of those 2 losses. And offensively, I think Stidham has been exactly what they wanted from him. He's been a very accurate passer. He's athletic enough. You know, he's not Nick Marshall or Cam Newton, but he can run some. And then they have Kerryon Johnson, who they can use. You know, they'll direct snap him to Wildcat and let him just pick his gap. And he's so effective at seeing the field and making people miss and turning, you know, what should be a 4 or 5 yard gain into a 30, 40, or 50-yard gain. They got a veteran offensive line, Mark, with 4 senior starters. Some of those guys are 5th-year guys. I mean, they've been around the block. So offensively, you've got an accurate quarterback. You've got a very charismatic and special running back. You've got playmakers at wide receiver. So they're dangerous, and they can put up a lot of points. And then defensively, it's the best Auburn defense that we've seen in some time. Up front, I think they're elite. I think they're up there with, you know, the type of defensive fronts that Alabama has had in Clemson and Ohio State and some of these other marquee programs. Linebacking, they're solid. In the back end, I do think they're a little susceptible. I think if you have time to throw the football, you can make plays against them in the passing game. Special teams wise, their kicker's the best in the country, in my opinion. Daniel Carlson grew up an Alabama fan and an Alabama family, wound up at Auburn. I mean, if you're across midfield, you feel like you're in scoring range with him. So very solid football team. Going to be at home. The atmosphere is going to be electric. Certainly, I know Auburn feels like they should, you know, have an opportunity to win the game, and their fans do too. If I'm Alabama, though, Mark, I think that based on what they've done here under Nick Saban, based on the fact that they have Nick Saban, I think Alabama's approach will be, you know, we don't have to be anything we're not. We don't have to do anything special. We've just got to go in there and play Alabama football, not turn it over, be solid. And I think this, if both teams play their best, if both teams play well, I think Alabama wins the game. I still think they're a better team. Now, if Auburn plays well and Alabama doesn't play a really good game, certainly Auburn's capable of winning. But I think best versus best, both teams play well. It's a clean game. I think Alabama comes out on top.
Talking Alabama-Auburn with Gary Harris. You can join him. He's the sports director there at WVUA in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, talking Tide as a 4.5-point favorite on the Plains against Auburn. The Tigers, of course, one of the few 2-loss teams in the nation with a clear path, a very difficult one, but a clear path to the college football playoff if they can win out. Gary, we know that you've got a ton going on this Thanksgiving Eve, so we appreciate you spending some time to talk Iron Bowl with us.
Well, good to be with you. My pleasure, Mark.